And that is when the influencers, right-wing influencers who had been very good to Trump, who amidst all the deranged media out there were able to see through the bullshit and reported honestly and helped him a lot and did not deserve the humiliation that she heaped upon them. It was not through their own doing. She invited them there. I mean, who wouldn't go, right? It's Pam Bondi. Do you want to come meet with the head of the FBI and the vice president for an exclusive Epstein leak? Yeah, yes. Most people in media would say yes to that. So they went, and in the classic line from Animal House, you fucked up. You trusted us. That's what happened. They fucked up because they trusted her, and they were humiliated because she gave them all these binders that read Epstein files, volume 1. And there was nothing new in there. Nothing. There was no scoop. Why would she do that? And it led to, behind the scenes, like all the White House staffers, like the top people in the White House for Trump, distancing themselves from Pam Bondi immediately. Like, we don't know why she did that. And then it came out that they were urging her not to do it. But I don't know what she was up to. She wanted to have some moment where she looked like she was the one. And then she was in trouble. And she knew it. So she said, all right, that's just the first tranche. I'm really pissed off. The FBI is the one who screwed me. They said everything was in there. Okay, like you need to know. You need to know that no lawyer just sloppily calls all these PR people in and says, here are the files without knowing what's in there. But she wants us to believe she did. Okay, so she either was clueless or she intentionally embarrassed them. I don't know which is better.
Ouch. That is lawyer, former Fox News host, and wildly successful far-right MAGA commentator Megyn Kelly unloading on Attorney General Pam Bondi over the Epstein files failures from the very beginning of the second Trump administration. And she candidly admits in her takedown of Bondi that the various far-right influencers like Libs of TikTok and DC Drano and Jack Posobiec and others were humiliated by Bondi on the topic of the Epstein files. And that's pretty heavy stuff coming from Megyn Kelly. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, the fallout, the MAGA fallout of the Epstein files fiasco from the second Trump administration, it continues, and Democrats, liberals, and progressives would be well within their rights and well advised to try to continue to exacerbate that. As you know, Jeffrey Epstein is a deceased sex trafficker with close ties to not just powerful Hollywood figures, but Donald Trump himself. They were close for years. They were filmed and photographed partying together at various points. Epstein died in federal custody on Trump's watch when Trump was president the first time around. He died under what seemed to be mysterious circumstances, but the official cause of death was listed as suicide. Of course, in MAGA, there became popular conspiracy theories that Epstein did not kill himself and was murdered by some nefarious forces. Again, this would have happened on Trump's watch had that occurred. And after years hyping up the so-called Epstein files and the Epstein client list, who was Epstein dealing with the sex trafficking, crimes? It must have been the liberals and the Democrats. That's what we've been hearing from Alex Jones and Elon Musk and so many far-right MAGA influencers. And the Trump campaign took advantage of this. Like, hell yeah, you get us back into power, we're going to release all this stuff. That's our commitment to you. And then they waffled and they stumbled. They face-planted at various points because it turns out, of course, that Donald Trump, again, a longtime associate of Epstein, has absolutely no interest in declassifying anything and releasing anything. He's waffled on that, as we've discussed. And then finally, the Trump administration committed the ultimate cardinal sin on the notion of Jeffrey Epstein by announcing, hey, listen, we've reviewed it, and it was a suicide, and there is no client list, even though we've told you that there was a client list. And so, there's nothing to see here, folks. Just move on. We're done. And that's the MAGA rebellion, which, again, hopefully will continue because they either lied to you at the beginning or they lied to you at the end, but objectively speaking, they lied, and they should be called out for it, and there should be political consequences. And it puts people like Megyn Kelly and her co-host here, Emily Jashinsky, I believe, or Jahinsky, who is a commentator on Breaking Points. And I got to say, Emily seems very, very smart from the appearances I've seen of her on Breaking Points, but also really frustrated with her on all of her appearances on Megyn Kelly because Emily knows, if you watch her on Breaking Points, about the moral, intellectual, political principled failures of the Trump administration. She knows and would always lose a debate to the contrary, that the Trump administration is objectively more censorious and corrupt than any Democratic administration. And so she basically presents one point of view when she's on Breaking Points, and then does softball Trump apologia when she's on Megyn Kelly's show. So that's very disappointing, but that's the problem of being a smart conservative. It's like being a really smart flat earther. If you're supporting Donald Trump, the facts are almost always against you because he's objectively worse, and you find yourself in this awkward position. So I just want to put that out there, that if you see her on Breaking Points, this is really frustrating. I want to play the first part of that clip, though, of Megyn Kelly's takedown of Pam Bondi. And again, I gotta say, Megyn Kelly herself, MAGA commentator, but will occasionally criticize Donald Trump, right? Unlike Jack Posobiec and others as well, Alex Jones. So let's play the first part of this, and then we'll unpack it together.
In the memo, the language that Pam Bondi used, which was no incriminating client list, that really jumped out to me, actually, because it maybe gives her a little wiggle room between saying that she had a client list and then saying there's no incriminating client list. So I wanted to ask you if maybe that's what's going on here before we get into some of these other details.
I don't know what's going on with her. I believe Dan Bongino's not lying to me. I really do. When Dan Bongino puts his name on something, I don't know Cash as well, but I know Dan. I know him well. We've worked together many, many years. He didn't just turn around and start lying. That's not who he is. He's an honest guy, and he takes this role very seriously. And
yeah, so we played a clip from Bongino in a couple of videos yesterday where Bongino's like, well, listen, as deputy FBI director, I'm no longer paid for my opinion. So this asshole tacitly admitted that when he was a right-wing, Rumble commentator, he was lying his ass off and gassing up the right-wing conspiracists in his audience and in the Republican Party, dishonestly. But now that he's deputy FBI director, well, I mean, the evidence totally contradicts all this shit that I've been saying for years. And I'm paid to tell the truth now. I'm not paid for my opinions. I'm not paid to tell lies. So yes, Dan Bongino is incredibly dishonest. And I'm going to show a clip from Ben Shapiro in just a moment, too, where he basically tries to do the same thing that Megyn Kelly is, too, which is that they try to gerrymander blame. It's not Trump. It's not Kash Patel. It's not Dan Bongino. It's Pam Bondi.
I trust him, and I trust him not to actively mislead me or you. However, Pam Bondi has definitely made multiple inconsistent statements, and I'm sorry, but she does not deserve the benefit of my good opinion, and I'm not prepared to give it to her. She's, yes, on camera saying that clip that Peter Doocy was referencing, where John Roberts asked her, do you have the client list? Like, are you going to release a client list? And she said, yes. He said client list, and she said, yes, it's on my desk right now. So it was not as amorphous as Caroline, to her credit. She's trying to cover for the administration, which is her job, but they put her in a very difficult position. It's not.
So again, this is the frustrating thing about Megyn Kelly. Again, and there's a really good Mediaite video about her. Look, Megyn Kelly's smart. Megyn Kelly is wildly successful. She's more successful now than she ever was on Fox News, but she is leaning into this far-right trope. It is true that Carolyn Leavitt has a job, and that is to spin for the administration, as all press secretaries do. Jen Psaki did it. Karine Jean-Pierre did it. Both of them for Biden. Right now, Carolyn Leavitt for Trump. In Trump term 1, it was Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Sean Spicer and Kayleigh McEnany. That is their job. And so I understand that, you have to take what they say with a grain of salt at a bare minimum. And you also have to recognize that that's their job is not quite to tell the unvarnished truth, but to spin. But would Megyn Kelly ever, for a Democratic press secretary say, well, it's not true, but to her credit, it's her job to cover for the immense bullshit. If I had a nickel for every time Megyn Kelly ripped Karine Jean-Pierre in particular, a new one, I could retire. Okay. So again, just the bullshit, moving of the goalposts and bending the standards to accommodate Trump. It's okay if Carolyn Leavitt lies her ass off. And actually, we owe her sympathy because the Trump administration put her in a really tough position. Fuck that.
Amorphous. It's very clear. She said yes. And here's what happened. What happened was Pam Bondi said that. And then a week later, she said she was going to be releasing some very interesting documents the next day, when on Jesse Waters' show, like 6 days after that first hit, he said, hey, what client list is coming out? And she was like, it's going to be getting very interesting, and some interesting Epstein documents are coming out tomorrow. And that is when the influencers, right-wing influencers who had been very good.
And then you see where it covers into the first clip, right? So again, Megyn Kelly, I think, is right to, criticize Pam Bondi even from a right-wing perspective, but she is way too generous, dishonestly generous with the benefit of the doubt vis-a-vis Dan Bongino. But you know what? She's not alone, because Ben Shapiro effectively does the same thing, right? Ben Shapiro, who is not as MAGA crazy as Megyn Kelly, although he endorsed Trump and voted for Trump and campaigned for Trump. This is his take on the Epstein files fiasco.
We now have the answers. And the problem is this: people who never hedged their bets, people who never at any point suggested to you that they don't have data to back up the speculation, that the speculation was in and of itself the conclusion, that if you speculate without evidence, that amounts to an actual conclusion to an investigation, they're going to be very upset today, because it turns out that the DOJ and the FBI have concluded that Epstein didn't have a client list and died by suicide, according to a memo detailing the findings obtained by Axios. Now, again, does this put to bed all inquiries? Of course not. People can continue to speculate as much as they want. And I think there's still open questions here regarding how did Epstein make his money? Right, that's a very serious open question. And the speculation for a long time was he made his money from blackmail. But the DOJ and the FBI, again, run by people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, are telling you, I'm not telling you, they're telling you, people who are members of the Trump administration, people you elected and put into these positions to get you the truth on this matter, are telling you that he didn't, in fact.
None of those people were elected. They were appointed, right? Trump was elected. But even that right there, you all trust Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi. Unfortunately, I think that's probably the case, probably less so today than the day before. But this idea, you elected them, so therefore they're trustworthy. I just, all of this is super fucked. And it is another example of Ben Shapiro tying himself in knots to try to put the Epstein thing to bed because he knows it's politically harmful to the Trump coalition, without ever reckoning for the fact that it was the Trump coalition's fault in the first place that they're suffering this. It was the Trump administration and the Trump administration coalition, I should say, the coalition, the pro-Trump coalition alone, that gassed up the Epstein thing in the first place. So it's 100% your guys' fault, and you deserve the shitstorm that follows.
He was not murdered. He did not keep a client list. And he did not blackmail powerful figures. Okay, right? That is the thing that they are saying, not I. They are saying this. If you're willing to throw that over and claim they're lying, then I'd like to see you present your evidence that they are in fact lying. Because I know Dan. I don't think that Dan Bongino is lying to me. I know Kash Patel a little bit. I don't think Kash Patel is lying to me.
They have no basis other than they're right wing and they love Donald Trump. That's it. Dan Bongino lied. Dan Bongino was one of the, as I noted on Twitter. Shapiro says he knows Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and claims that they wouldn't lie to him, which is really fucking weird since they were some of the loudest voices boosting Epstein conspiracy theories in the first place. Shapiro won't contend with that. Oh, you trust him? He won't lie to you? Well, he was either lying to you before or he's lying to you now, because what he said before and what he said now are mutually exclusive by definition. You moron. Speaking of Dan Bongino. As Mediaite reports, Trump's deputy FBI director gets ratioed to the moon by MAGA over Epstein case. You failed us. On Monday night, the deputy FBI director faced the wrath of MAGA in his first post since the DOJ announced the long-touted client list of the deceased sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein did not actually exist. Bongino, along with top Trump officials, including Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, had suggested the DOJ possessed damning materials from the Epstein case. On Fox News back in February, Bondi was asked, the DOJ may be releasing a list of Epstein clients. Will that really happen? She said it's sitting on my desk, yada, yada. In a mere 2.5 hours, Bongino received an eye-popping 10,000 replies to 2,300 retweets, many of, if not most of which, were quote tweets trashing him. So he says, we are doubling down. We are not letting up. And the top reply to his tweet was, you failed us. It was followed by an impossibly long list of replies ripping the FBI and DOJ's handling of the Epstein case, which, as Mediaite founder Dan Abrams responded, could be a political liability. Let's just take a look. I'm curious. Cenk Uygur responded. Took 48 hours or so to get humbled. And of course, that guy's bending to Epstein there. Now, again, a lot of cope. Now people are saying, actually, It might be good that the Epstein files had not been released. Used to believe he would do the right thing, probably a good man, got into office and was confronted with the powers that run the world, and he is powerless against them. Take the L and go home to your family, a humbling experience. The only thing we see you doubling down on is covering up for the Epstein stuff. If Epstein had no clients and released Ghislaine Maxwell from prison, LOL, okay. Either you lied about the Epstein list for years on your podcast or you're lying now. Which one is it? Congrats, Dan. You made the right hate the FBI again. Dan, we need answers on the Epstein stuff, bro. Can't let Bondi off the hook for lying to everybody. I'm curious. I didn't respond to this. Do you tell? Ooh, that's not good. Do you trust Dan Bongino to do the job? 90% say no. Ouch! Out of 11,000 plus votes. Yikes. Yeah, for the most part, he's getting savaged here in these replies. So again, look, we could go on. There were other things I wanted to talk, but like just listening to Megyn Kelly, I mean, that was a fascinating clip because she publicly attacked Pam Bondi. She tried to gerrymander Dan Bongino and Kash Patel out of culpability, just like Ben Shapiro. But she also admitted that not only did Bondi screw up spectacularly, but the various right-wing influencers who trusted her were publicly humiliated. And I love to hear that. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.